Advaita Gadadhara Srivas Adi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mama Jnanatimidandhasya Jnananjana Chalakaya Chakshuronmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudhirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatir Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. On this very auspicious day of Dvadashi and also the auspicious disappearance day of Srila Ishwarapuri, I'm very happy to have the opportunity to have the association of devotees. Today we are reading from 7th canto, 7th chapter, text 25. This chapter is entitled What Prahlad Maharaj Learned in the Womb. So text 25. We'll read text 25. I'll read the verse a couple of times and then the devotees can also. Buddhirjagaranam swapnah sushuptiriti vrittayah tayenaivanubhuyante sodhyakshah purushah parah. Buddhirjagaranam swapnah sushuptiriti vrittayah tayenaivanubhuyante sodhyakshah purushah parah. Buddhirjagaranam swapnah sushuptiriti vrittayah tayenaivanubhuyante sodhyakshah purushah parah. Devotees can chant.
Ebistri varnai bhar yastar buddhi vedhyai kuryod bhavahai swarupam atmano buddhyed gandhar vayum ivan yavat.
Other devotees.
Buddhirjaganam swapna sushuptir iti vrittayah tayenaiva nubhuyante sodakshya purusha paraha.
Anyone else? Okay. We'll read the word for word translation and then the translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Buddhe, of the intelligence. Jagaranam, the waking or active state of the gross senses. Swapnaha, dreaming, the activity of the senses without the gross body. Sushuptihi, deep sleep or cessation of all activities, although the living entity is the seer. Iti, thus. Prattayaha, the various transactions. Taha, they. Yena, by whom. Eva, indeed. Anubhuyante, are perceived. Saha, that. Adhyakshaha, overseer, who is different from the activities. Purushaha, the enjoyer. Paraha, transcendental. Translation. Intelligence can be perceived in three states of activity: wakefulness, dreaming, and deep sleep. The person who perceives these three is to be considered the original master, the ruler, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Without intelligence, one cannot understand the direct activities of the senses, nor can he understand dreaming or the cessation of all gross and subtle activities. The seer and the controller is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Soul, by whose direction the individual soul can understand when he's awake, when he's sleeping, and when he's completely in trance. In the Bhagavad Gita 15:15, the Lord says, Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto matta smriti jnanam apohanam cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. The living entities are completely absorbed in the three states of wakefulness, dreaming, and deep sleep through their intelligence. This intelligence is supplied by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who accompanies the individual soul as a friend. Srila Madhvacharya says that the living entity is sometimes described as Sattva Buddhi, when his intelligence acts directly to perceive pains and pleasures above activities. There is a dreaming state in which understanding comes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Matta Smriti Jnanam Apohanam Cha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Super Soul, is the Supreme Controller, and under his direction, the living entities are sub-controllers. One must understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead with one's intelligence. So I'll read the translation again. Intelligence can be perceived in three states of activity: wakefulness, dreaming, and deep sleep. The person who perceives these three is to be considered the original master, the ruler, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, by way of context, and this particular verse is a little more in the Upanishadic style, where it's somewhat of an abstract philosophy that is being placed here. But we have to understand this in the overall context of what Srila Prahlad Maharaj is speaking to his classmates. So when the classmates asked Prahlad Maharaj, how did you learn this transcendental philosophy? Because you say you met Narada Muni, but we have no access to personalities like that. So that's when Prahlad Maharaj in the beginning of the chapter explains how when his father was performing austerities, his mother was captured by the demigods, and she was pregnant at that time. Kayadu was pregnant, and so the plan was for them to kill this lady, because they thought that if the father was such a huge demon, then the woman is pregnant, the son's going to be even a bigger demon. So let's kill him before he can even create any havoc. And Sri Narada Muni came to that place and stopped the demigod, saying, no, this child who's to be born is a great devotee of the Lord, and you will not be able to kill him. So give up that idea. And it's interesting to note that the demigods, including Indra, they didn't question Narada Muni. They didn't ask him, how do you know? What's the basis of your statement? And so they just accepted what Narada Muni said. And that's the parampara. And that's the difference between the demigods and the devotees, and demigods and the demons, right? So the demigods are aligned with the will of the Lord. They dovetail their propensities with the will of the Lord. Although they have a propensity to enjoy, which is why they become demigods. And so they have a propensity to enjoy, but they still want to enjoy everything in the context of how they can align themselves with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So when the representative of the Lord gives them this kind of instruction, they immediately are, their mindset and their conditioning is such that they immediately accept it. They're not conditioned to reject it or argue it. So they immediately accept it, and they released Kayadu under the custody of Narada Muni, who took her to the hermitage and he taught her various things. And Prahlad Maharaj learned all this in the womb. So the instructions that Prahlad Maharaj is giving in this chapter, and will continue in the next 30 or so verses, is really very similar to the instructions that you hear in other parts of the Bhagavatam. When you hear the teachings of the Kumaras, which comes in the fourth canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, when the Kumaras speak with Prithu Maharaj, similar things are said. When you hear the teachings of Kapiladev in the third canto, starting chapter 25 through chapter 33, 32, end of 32, similar things are said. And so pretty much wherever you hear these teachings, it's the same thing. Like Sukadev Goswami in the beginning of the second canto, when he starts speaking, he speaks the same thing, right? He speaks about various yoga systems, and then finally he says ultimately one should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And similarly in the first canto as well, in the very beginning, the second chapter of the first canto, Sutta Goswami, when he starts speaking based on the questions, in the very beginning itself, I think it's like 15th or 16th verse, I forget exactly, but in the second chapter of the first canto, he says, Tasmat ekena manasa Bhagavan Satvatam Patihi Shrotavya Kirtitavyascha Dheya Pujaschya Nityada. This is very beautiful verse that Sutta Goswami speaks. Tasmat. Tasmat means therefore. So when you hear this word therefore, it tells you it's a conclusion of a point. And so there could be so many arguments made. And so finally, when someone says therefore, they understand that's the conclusion. So that's the gist of the argument. And Sutta Goswami is actually concluding right in the beginning of the Bhagavatam. He said, Tasmat, therefore, ekena manasa. Ekena means single-minded. Ekena manasa, single-minded. That means no deviation, no confusion, no let me try this and let me try that and let me try something else. So there's absolutely no confusion in the mind of Sutta Goswami. He says, Tasmat ekena manasa. Eka means one in Sanskrit. So ekena manasa means single-minded. What should you do with single-minded attention? Many people you find in the world are single-minded. They're single-minded in their pursuit of money. They're single-minded in their pursuit of fame or power or so many other things. But what Sutta Goswami is saying is, Tasmat ekena manasa Bhagavan Satvatam Patihi. Bhagavan is Bhagavan Shri Krishna, as described by Parashara Muni, the one who has these six opulences in full. Bhagavan. The suffix van means one who possesses. So in Sanskrit, the suffix van means one who possesses. So dhanavan means one who possesses wealth. Dhanavan. Bhagyavan means one who possesses bhagya, which means good fortune or good luck, however you want to look at it. So bhaga means opulence. So Bhagavan means one who possesses opulences. So Bhagavan Satvatam Patihi. Satvatam Patihi is one who's the protector of the devotees. Pati means master. So one who's the protector of the devotees. What should one do? Shrotavya. One should hear. Kirtatavyascha. Should chant, glorify. Dheya. One should meditate upon. Puja. Puja means worship. Pujascha. And Pujascha. So one should meditate upon, hear about, chant, and worship. Who? Sattvatampati, Bhagavan Sattvatampati. And when? Nityada. Nityada means always, at all times. So Sutta Goswami actually concludes the instructions of the Srimad Bhagavatam in one sense, right in the beginning of the Bhagavatam. He says one should constantly worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead at all times. And so the same instruction is being given by Prahlad Maharaj. And so he just elaborates to his classmates that there are so many different paths, and ultimately one has to come to the point of worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in this particular verse, Srila Prahlad Maharaj is talking about the three states of activity. So if you look at your existence, anybody's existence, it's in three states. You're either fully awake, or you're in some sort of deep trance and sleep where you have no perception of anything. There's no dream even. It's just completely in complete trance. Or you're in the middle, where you're in some sort of dreaming state, where your subtle body is still acting, your mind, intelligence, and ego is acting, but your gross body is not. And some people are in this state when they're sleeping, and some people are in this state even when they're apparently not sleeping, but they're just daydreaming. So if you analyze our consciousness and how we interact with the modes of nature, our activities are in three states: whether we're fully awake, whether we're fully asleep and completely in trance and no dreaming, nothing, no thoughts happening, or in the middle. And so all these states, Prahlad Maharaj is saying, is that are perceived by intelligence. And the intelligence is given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Srila Prabhupada quotes from the Gita as well. He says that Sarvasya chaham hridhi sannivishto, that I'm seated in everyone's heart. And from me, matta smriti, jnanam apohanam cha. From me comes smriti. Smriti means remembrance. And so if you look at the word origin of Smriti, even our the Puranas are called Smriti. So if you look at all the Shastras that we have, they're divided in essentially three categories at the highest level, right? So you have Shruti, which are the Vedas. And Shruti means that's what's heard. And so the oral tradition of the Vedas, which that's why when someone tries to date when were the Vedas written down and try to figure out when it was written down, that's a pointless exercise because the Vedas were an oral tradition. They are an oral tradition. They passed on orally from master to disciple. And I've actually, if you ever go to a Veda Patashala, which is a Vedic school, Patashala just means school, right? These are schools in many parts of India. You will find where children from the age of 4 or 5 they join these Patashalas and they study how to recite these Vedas for 16 years, and they essentially graduate with the equivalent of a bachelor's degree, and then you can go for a master's degree, which is you practice for another 3 years. You get a so you called Ganapati. You learn certain ganas, which are advanced topics in the Vedas. And so for 16 years, they learned to master how to chant a particular branch of the Vedas, whether it's Yajurveda or Samaveda or so on. And so all these Vedic traditions are passed down orally only, and the master teaches the disciple. And the reason for that is that there's a very specific meter and a very specific way these mantras are chanted. And if you ever, and now it's available on YouTube as well, if you go and just go to YouTube and say Yajurveda chanting, you will find, you know, many videos of 50, 100, hundreds of children and young men and eight men of all ages actually chanting the Vedic mantras in a certain very specific way. And it's very blissful to hear it. But they have to be chanted in a very specific way. So there's an oral tradition. So if you just read it, you may just completely mispronounce it. And I'm sure all of you know the stories from the Bhagavatam where certain devotees mispronounced mantras and then the opposite result came, right? In the case of Altvashta, and then how even our Vritrasur was even produced because instead of creating a demon who would kill Indra, he ended up creating a demon who would be killed by Indra. So it's very great emphasis on the pronunciation of the Vedic mantras. That's called Shruti. And Smritis are Puranas, which are essentially remembered. So Smriti also means Purana. So here in this context, it means remembrance. So Matta Smriti, Jnanam and knowledge, and Apohanam. Apohanam means ignorance. So all these things, or forgetfulness, all these things come from the Lord. So ultimately, the Lord of our intelligence is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And there's a mini Purusha, and there's the real Purusha who is the Supreme Enjoyer. Just like in the Bhagavad Gita as well, Krishna speaks about in the 13th chapter, Kshetra Kshetragya. He speaks about there's an individual Kshetragya and also the collective Kshetragya who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so this intelligence is supplied by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who accompanies the individual soul as a friend. And so we understand from this perception that ultimately, if you surrender your intelligence to material nature, you become material. If the same intelligence is surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it becomes spiritual. So it's not a question of whether you attach or don't attach. The question really is, where do you attach? The same conversation happens with between Kardama Muni and his mother Devahuti in the 25th chapter of the third canto, entitled Devotional Service, Glories of Devotional Service, where Devahuti asks Kardama Muni, Kapila Dev, what is the reason for my attachment? This aham mameti concept, I and mine. Aham is I and mameti is mine. So this concept of I and mine, I'm so bewildered by this concept. How can I get out of this? And Kapiladev says that the way to get out of this is this Adhyatma Yoga system, which is conducted by three limbs, by Jnana, by Yoga, which is the eightfold Ashtanga Yoga, and by Bhakti. And he eventually brings Devahuti to the point of saying, practice of jnana and practice of the Ashtanga Yoga is useless if it does not lead to bhakti. If it does not lead to bhakti, it is completely useless. A similar point is made by actually Devahuti to Kardam Muni in the 24th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, where she says, Nayat karma dharmaya na viragaya kalpate na tirthavada sevaye jivan api mruto hi saha. So she's saying that if performance of dharma, or generally people want to perform some sort of activities to enjoy sense gratification, that is what karmis do. But people who are more inclined to practice religious processes will follow prescribed duties so that they can enjoy some sort of sense gratification. And that is the case of all religions in the world. Typically, that's what people are taught. It doesn't matter what the denomination. It could be any sort of denomination across the globe. And most people are told that if you follow certain rules and regulations, then you can go to heaven, you can enjoy prosperity in this life, and after death, you can enjoy heavenly bliss. So that is essentially karma kanda. So Devotee is saying that if you practice religious principles of being charitable, being good, and so on, and that does not lead to renunciation, then you're missing the point. And if you become renounced in terms of not being a sense gratifier, and that sense of renunciation does not lead to devotion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, natirthapada sevaye, meaning that if you're not inclined to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then she says, Jivan api mruto hi saha. Even though you may be breathing, you're as good as dead. So this progression of following some religious principles so that you can become detached, and then you can become detached, then you can get attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because the concept of just dry detachment is useless. Because ultimately you have to attach somewhere. So the process of an attachment to the Supreme Lord ultimately brings us to the point of Krishna consciousness. And so Srila Prabhupada, out of his kindness to us, has short-circuited this entire process for us. And he says that right in the beginning of the purports of the Gita and the Bhagavatam, even though the verse may say something specifically about karma yoga or jnana yoga, Srila Prabhupada very kindly always makes that point very clearly in the purport that for devotees, we should practice Krishna consciousness. That is the only way. In fact, whenever you see the words karma yoga, whenever Krishna uses the word karma yoga, Srila Prabhupada always translates karma yoga as devotional service. Because ultimately, the objective of karma yoga is devotional service. So Srila Prabhupada actually just distills all the complexity and makes it very clear and simple for us in terms of how we practice this process. Even if you remember in the 8th chapter of the Gita, when Krishna is speaking about the various processes that a living entity can practice in terms of Shak Chakra Yoga, the six chakras, right from the Swadhisthana Chakra and so on, which is a very complex yoga process, which I thankfully don't really have much understanding of, where ultimately the yogi can release his life force from the top of his head, and all of that, right? So that whole process, Krishna is describing in brief in the 8th chapter. But then Srila Prabhupada, out of his kindness in every single purport, he emphasizes that for a devotee need not practice these processes. A devotee should simply focus on chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, and that is sufficient. In fact, in those purports, in the middle of that chapter, in the 8th chapter, every single purport, Prabhupada somehow says one should chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, without fail, in multiple purports. So he gives us the gist of this knowledge. Now, when it comes to Srila Prahlad Maharaj, he's just coming to this point. So when we just read this verse, we may think somehow the objective of life is to deeply understand this philosophy. But Srila Prahlad Maharaj will come to this point very quickly in the subsequent verses. He will say, while we understand this philosophy, the point of understanding the philosophy is to understand that ultimately the objective is to become a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There is no other objective. Simply dry understanding of philosophy does not help us. Because ultimately we have to become a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that is the sum and substance of this verse. Are there any questions specifically to this verse? If I also wanted to maybe speak a little bit about Ishvarapuri, if devotees are okay with that. But if there are any questions related to this specific topic, we can maybe take it now.
I have a question.
Yes, Prabhuji.
I'm trying to understand how by because the verse is talking about the perception of intelligence as manifesting in wakefulness, dreaming, and deep sleep. So how does that understanding actually help us to progress in Krishna consciousness?
Thank you. Very nice question, Prabhuji. So Srila Prabhupada actually talks about this whole concept in other purports in the Srimad Bhagavatam as well. He hasn't given so much detail here, but there are other purports in the second canto as well as in the third canto where he speaks about this concept quite specifically. And essentially, the whole idea is using our intelligence to understand the existence of the soul, and that is the whole point, right? So when and Srila Prabhupada actually, I forget exactly which purport, I'll give you that reference, but he very specifically speaks about how we can use our intelligence to actually perceive the existence of the soul in our body. And so, what Prahlad Maharaj is speaking about is that using our intelligence, we understand that when we're awake, right, when we're fully awake and active, and we're in material consciousness, we fully understand that and we're convinced that we are this body for most materialistic people. So when you're awake and full of activity, it's very easy to confuse that you're actually this body. And you actually think and be convinced of that fact. And that's what most people end up being. So when they're active and if they're injured, they feel that they're injured. If they're spoken to in a very honorable way, they feel they're honored. If they're dishonored, they feel they're dishonored. So they associate everything that's happening with the body with themselves. And they're 100% convinced that they're this body. Now, when they're in a dreaming state, your body is completely inactive, but your subtle body is active. So if you use your intelligence, you can understand that, okay, so my subtle body is different from my gross body because I may be enjoying a fantastic meal, or I might be flying in an airplane, or whatever else I might be doing. But the reality is I'm still sleeping in my bed. And my subtle body, my mind, intelligence, and ego are experiencing all these different fantastic things that my gross body is not experiencing. But sometimes you see, right, when people have a nightmare, or children have nightmares, they get up scared, they get up crying because they're afraid something bad has happened. Now, what has happened? Nothing has happened to their gross body. Whatever has happened to their subtle body. Now, when you start thinking about analyzing it with an intelligence, you understand that your gross body is different from your subtle body. In the same way, when you are in deep sleep, you realize that even the subtle body is not active. Even your subtle body is inactive, and your gross body is also inactive. But still, you still have life air, you're still living. So, that idea of using intelligence to understand these three states of wakefulness, dreaming, and deep sleep can empirically give you the understanding that the Atma or the soul is different from the body. And then you inquire into the nature of the soul. And that is what Srila Prabhupada will say in the subsequent purports. And Prahlad Maharaj also will speak about the same point. So starting text 26, you start speaking about how the soul is different from the body and how you can perceive the attachment of the soul, the nature of the soul is spiritual and not material. So the whole idea of this analogy or this this philosophy of understanding the dreaming, wakeful, and deep sleep state is really to understand the difference between the body and the soul, and the fact that using this analysis, you can perceive that you're not the body. You're actually the soul. So if you're not the body, you're the soul, then how do you get rid of this aham mameti? So Srila Prahlad Maharaj will actually say this, that in the subsequent, towards the end of the chapter, I believe, he speaks about this. He says that ultimately, when the body dies, the body is either buried and eaten by worms or burnt and become ashes and become earth. So the body doesn't belong to you, it belongs to the earth anyway. Then what is the point of saying that the things that are related to the body, like family members and paraphernalia, belong to you? Even the body doesn't belong to you, it belongs to the earth. So how can you be attached to things that are related to the body? Because if the body doesn't belong to you, how do the things that are related to the body belong to you? And that's the whole point that this philosophy is intended to make. Srila Prabhupada doesn't actually get into that level of detail in the purport, but that's really the point. Does that answer your question, Prabhuji?
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Mother Jambavati had a question. Maybe she raised her hand by mistake. Anybody else? Okay. I just wanted to say maybe a few words about Srila Ishwar Puri. As all of you know, Srila Ishwar Puri was the spiritual master of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And actually, Ishwar Puri actually met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu much earlier in Navadvip. Ishwar Puri was a disciple of Madhavendra Puri. And of course, there's so much you can speak about Madhavendra Puri in terms of glories. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhyalila, the fourth chapter is all about the glories of Madhavendra Puri. And if you get a chance, and I actually urge you to do it, go and read the fourth chapter of the Madhyalila of Chaitanya Charitamrita, the beautiful pastime of Madhavendra Puri, how he found the deity of Giridhar Gopal, who's currently in Nathdwara in Rajasthan, but originally was on top of Govardhan Hill, and he was established by Madhavendra Puri, and how Madhavendra Puri went to Remuna, and the whole beautiful, sweet pastime of Shir Chor Gopinath, how Gopinath from Remuna stole kheer or sweet rice in parts for Madhavendra Puri. The whole pastime is so sweet that it's just wonderful to read. So his disciple was Ishwar Puri, and Ishwar Puri actually came to Navadvip when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was a young man and had not started the Sankirtan movement yet. So he met Advaita Acharya, he met Gadadhar Pandit as well. He was very impressed with Gadadhar Pandit. And he met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who actually invited him to his home and offered him prasad, cooked by Mother Sachi. And so when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to Gaya to perform his father's last rites at the Vishnupada, or the lotus feet of the Lord, that's imprinted in Gaya. So the system is that when ancestors depart, when parents or other ancestors depart, then typically devotees go to Gaya and they perform the Shraddha ceremony, and they offer food and water, pinda, to the ancestors, and that's accepted through the medium of offering it first to the lotus feet of Vishnu. So when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went there, he met Ishwar Puri, and he asked him for initiation. And of course, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, does not need to be initiated. But following the process set forth by Lord Krishna himself, who took initiation from Sandipani Muni, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to establish the parampara again in terms of what we should do, the importance of taking initiation from a spiritual master. And so he was initiated into the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. This mantra that we chant. And then when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came back, that's when he started the Hare Krishna Sankirtan movement. So he waited for the instruction and the order of his spiritual master to start. Although he was the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, he waited for that initiation to happen. And he came back to Navadvip and he was completely transformed. In fact, before he went to Gaya, all the associates, the older associates, including Advaitacharya and Srivas Thakur, were wondering, when is this boy Nimai going to actually show his Yuga Avatar purpose? All he's doing right now is showing his scholarship, showing his intelligence, but he's not showing his mercy. He's not distributing love of God. And after he came back, Lord Chaitanya started this whole Sankirtan movement. All those pastimes all the devotees know, the Chandkazi pastime, and then the pastimes at the house of Srivas Thakur, the all-night kirtans, the Beda kirtans. All these kirtans happened only after it was initiated by Ishwarapuri. And even after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas and he went to Banaras or Kashi, there he was, the whole pastime, the devotees know the pastime of how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met Prakashanand Saraswati. Prakashanand Saraswati was a great Jnani, great scholar, Mayavadi sannyasi. He had 50,000 disciples. So we should, although we read Prabhupada's purports of how Mayavadis are criticized and so on, which is all authoritative and correct. We should also understand that a lot of these Mayavadi sannyasis are great scholars. So unless you understand Shastra to some extent, you will really not be able to have an argument with a Mayavadi sannyasi, because they will quote Shastra left, right, and center, and we have no answer, right? So that's why it's important for us to at least understand Shastra to a certain point where we can have some of these discussions. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very sweetly won over Prakashanand Saraswati, and that whole pastime is a different story altogether. But the one reference to Ishwarapuri there is when Prakashanand Saraswati asked him, "You're a sannyasi, why don't you study Vedanta with us? Why do you sing and dance like a sentimentalist?" And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very humbly said, my spiritual master told me that I'm a fool and I'm not capable of studying Vedanta. So he just initiated me into this mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, and told me to chant it. And after a few days, I went back to my guru and I told my guru that Kiba mantra diya, Kiba tara bal, japite hoile pagal. So he says that, oh Gosai, what mantra have you given me? What kind of mantra have you given me? The more I chant this mantra, the more I go mad. I'm going completely mad by chanting this mantra. So Ishwarapuri tells Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that, yes, you're now finding the transformative effects of this mantra. This is the right engagement of the mantra. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives full credit to his guru, Ishwarapuri, that my guru gave me this mantra because he felt I was a fool. And because of chanting this mantra, I've developed ecstatic love for God, which is why I do this. I don't do this because I don't purposely go and dance and sing. I just do it because I can't help myself. When I chant this mantra, I become completely ecstatic. And so that's how he wins over. And of course, he also has a bunch of arguments in terms of explaining Vedanta and so on. But essentially, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives all the credit for him to have love of God to his spiritual master. So this glorious Ishwarapuri, we are very fortunate to be in this parampara, and we're very fortunate. Actually, we said today's auspicious day, and I was reminded by one devotee that every day is auspicious because we have the opportunity to chant Krishna's names. We have the opportunity to chant Krishna's names. So when you can chant Krishna's names, that day is auspicious. So on this very auspicious day, Let us all offer our respectful obeisances to Srila Ishwarapuri and pray that we can also develop that intensity of chanting the holy name that he imparted to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Thank you.
Hare
Anuja,
Krishna.
you had a question? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I did the last time. I needed to switch from my laptop to my phone. My question, and thank you so much for your class this morning. My question is kind of similar to Uncle Tarka's in terms of the importance. Recently, just reading online about the restrictions that the GBC has, or guidelines for chanting the holy names, and particularly guidelines for kirtan, in which certain phrases, are restricted. And I'm wondering if doing so, how does that impact our devotional life? What are the consequences, if there are consequences, and why perhaps this particular type of, or these types of guidelines have been imposed? Like there are certain phrases, that we can't say supposedly in kirtan.
Hare Krishna, thank you for the question. I generally will not comment on like these kind of topics so much because it's beyond my jurisdiction, but I'll tell you from a Shastric standpoint, right? The intent is that you want to avoid deviation because the mind is such that, and there's a game of telephone tag that kids play, if you remember that game, right? That one kid will start a phrase and tell the next kid and the next kid, and by the time the phrase comes back to the original kid, it's completely different. So the point is that if one generation adds a little bit of deviation, and then the next generation adds one more deviation, by the time 10 generations pass, then what is happening in that 10th generation is completely different from what Srila Prabhupada even asked us to do. So that, at least from a principle standpoint, that's the intent. And I'm not going to get into specifics of which phrase or whatever, that's beyond my ability to comment on. But the simple thing we should remember is that Srila Prabhupada has given us everything that we need in his instructions, in his lectures, in his books. And as long as anybody's telling us what to do aligned with what Srila Prabhupada has told us, it's totally fine. What did Srila Prabhupada do when he came to Tompkins Square Park? He just sat and chanted Hare Krishna. He said, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. And then he said, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. That was it. And then he taught us some very specific Vaishnava bhajans we could sing, because we sing those bhajans, you're singing in parampara in terms of the mood and the way the Lord can be approached and so on. So that keeps us safe. It keeps us safe, right? Just like if you get on a plane, they ask you to sit on your seat. They ask you not to walk around when the plane's taking off. You put your seatbelt on so you can be safe. You're in a safe space. So similarly, when we stay within the safe space that what Srila Prabhupada gave us, then we don't try to speculate, because we are not acharyas. So we don't want to speculate. We want to chant what we were told to chant. So when Srila Prabhupada has given us very specifically things that we do, we chant 16 rounds minimum on our beads. We sing kirtan the way Srila Prabhupada taught us to sing kirtan. That's sufficient. So if one thinks that I should use my intelligence to either slightly modify or use my intelligence to make something more interesting, then you're entering danger zone, where you're assuming that you know better than Srila Prabhupada, and you can actually set some standard that will be better than what was given to us. So that's the bottom line here, right? That we have enough that we've got. I mean, even if we practice 10% of what Srila Prabhupada gave us, we'll go back to Godhead. And I've seen, and same topic happens where when I speak to devotees who read, who are starting to read so many other books, or starting to listen to so many other devotees who are nice devotees, but they're not from our parampara, right? They may be nice Babajis from Radha Kundan. Nothing wrong with them. They're great devotees themselves. But Srila Prabhupada never wanted us to do that. And somehow thinking that what we need is not in Srila Prabhupada's books and I need to go somewhere else is, and if I might use the word, being disloyal to Srila Prabhupada. So Srila Prabhupada has given us everything we need, right? So I would just say that we have everything we need, what Srila Prabhupada has given us. There's really no need for us to invent new things or do things that are non-standard. I would invite Dr. Prabhu to say some words on this because he's definitely more advanced in this topic and every other topic.
I can say a few things. While on the one hand, our understanding is that there are no hard and fast rules for chanting the holy names, there actually are rules. So, to begin with, there are the 10 offenses to be avoided in the chanting of the holy names. And then there are specific rules that Srila Prabhupada gave us. We chant Hare Krishna under the direction of Srila Prabhupada. It's by his grace and mercy that we are able to chant the holy names. So we do it according to his direction. And he gave us some specific guidelines. There are certain things that he recommends and other things that he advised us to avoid. So, for example, in Vrindavan, there are various there are variations of the Maha Mantra sometimes chanted by certain groups. There is one group that has had a temple close to the Krishna Balaram Mandir, and back in the day, the devotees would always hear them chanting. What was their chant? Nitai Gaur Radhe Sham Hare Krishna Hare Ram. It's poetic, and the tune was very catchy. Srila Prabhupada strictly forbid us to chant that. The chant is comprised of nothing but the Lord's holy names, but it is both rasabas and it's unauthorized. We chant as Lord Chaitanya chanted the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada instructed us to chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra in Kirtan. We chant the Pranam mantras to Srila Prabhupada. Then Srila Prabhupada instructed you chant the Panchatattva Maha Mantra 3 times, and then you chant Hare Krishna. And that's all, nothing more than that. But over the years, devotees have become accustomed to chanting all kinds of other things. And the number of other things that have been added to Kirtan has increased exponentially over the years. All different types of chants, different mantras, sometimes completely concocted by devotees. And so things have been introduced that are unauthorized. And yeah, on the one hand, you can say, well, they are names of Krishna, so what is the problem? But Srila Prabhupada was very particular about these things. Whenever anybody chanted anything other than what Srila Prabhupada had given us, he would shut down the kirtan immediately and chastise the devotee. He was intolerant of that. So the GBC has issued some guidelines because kirtan has slowly been moving away from the standards that Srila Prabhupada originally established for us. And that's something that naturally occurs over time, as Anandavilas Prabhu has pointed out. The game of telephone illustrates it clearly. With the passage of time, small incremental changes may be introduced, and gradually one builds upon another until over time you have something that no longer resembles the original. And so in ISKCON, our kirtan has actually gradually become pretty far removed from what Srila Prabhupada introduced to us. And this may be hard to understand for those who have not had the experience of kirtan with Srila Prabhupada. But I can tell you that that our modern day kirtans are really different from what Srila Prabhupada introduced. They've really moved a very long way. And there's a lot of things that are chanted that were never authorized by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada was very particular. His strong preference was that we simply chant Hare Krishna and nothing else. Even on the appearance days of various avatars, he himself set the example, and he instructed us what to do. So, say for example, the appearance of Lord Ramachandra, so devotees will chant Sita Ram, among other things. Srila Prabhupada never did this, and and if we attempted to do it, he would stop us. And he would say, you simply chant Hare Krishna. Everything is included in the Maha Mantra. You don't need to chant anything else. You don't need to chant Sita Ram or anything else. You just simply chant Hare Krishna. He was very strict about that. You will never find instances of Srila Prabhupada chanting Hari Bol in Kirtan. He never did that. He just chanted Hare Krishna. So the GBC is doing their duty by trying to ensure that that we don't deviate, that we try to stick closely to what Srila Prabhupada established. The guidelines that he gave us exist for a reason. And we're seeing practically that as time progresses, the original standards become distorted and we become diverted. So there's a need to bring things back to the original standard. So that's what's going on. I think that's clear.
I thank you
helps.
both, Uncle Charka and Prabhu Ananda Vilas, for those explanations. It makes perfect sense. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.